Hi there, and welcome to the Growth Whisperers, where everything that we talk about is building enduring, great companies. My name's Brad Giles, and I'm joined, as always, with my co-host, Kevin Lawrence. G'day, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing great today, Brad. It's a good day. This is we can jump right into my word of the day, and it's FOMO, fear of missing out. And normally I'd be in India this week. So all week I'm doing the night shift going from 6 p.m. till 12 p.m. or 1 a.m. with my amazing clients in India. And they're like my three Indian brothers. And I normally go to India we go to India once a year and then go and we'd meet in another country somewhere else in the year. And so we've been doing these virtual sessions, which is insanely efficient. We're getting all the stuff done. Like, it's awesome. We just don't get to hang out and have the time together. So last night, they had the evening before with their whole executive because they're meeting in person and they can do that in India. And then they got the 2 full days of strategy, which I'm dropping in to, do a few things, but I don't get to be there and hang out with my 3 Indian brothers and my extended Indian family, in which we always have a riot together. So yeah, I'm feeling like I'm missing out. Like, I don't, get the joys of the travel and, the airplane time to think and such, but more than that, the quality time with my family over there. And so yeah, it's a little sad and a little, like I am missing out. I'd like to think that they're missing out too, but for sure I'm missing out. So that's
awesome.
That's my word. FOMO is the word of the day.
Okay.
How about you?
Yeah. So my phrase is surrender as a strategy. Surrender as a strategy. Now, that's not what you might think, but we've got a case of it where I live. So we've got a state election coming up this weekend. Yeah. Now, we don't normally talk about politics, and I've got no interest in politics, but I do have an interest in strategy. Okay. And yes. So what's happening in our parliament, we have, like everywhere in the world, pretty much, we've got a left and a right side of politics. The left side of politics are currently in power, and the premier of our state has about a 90% approval rating, right? Absolutely crazy. Wow. We're at 59 seats in the parliament, and he's likely to get like 56 seats or something like that. So the right, the opposition in the right, they've conceded the election 2 weeks before the election to say, yeah, I've never heard of it before. So surrender as a strategy. Really? They've said, we're not going to win. Everyone knows.
Isn't that what the guy in the US did? He surrendered as a strategy. Isn't that how he approached it? Maybe it's becoming a new thing. Anyway.
Maybe it is the new black. Who knows?
Seriously?
But yeah. So about 2 or 3 weeks before the election, he came out and he said, I concede. There's no way we're going to win. This is a massive risk to democracy. If they're looking at only winning 2 seats of the 59 seat parliament, they said, this is going to be a really bad thing. So when you really think about it, it's crazy, but at the same time, it's surrender as a strategy. He's given up and said, you're going to give all of this power to one person. This is going to be a really bad idea.
We could do a whole podcast on that one, because there's another way. It's like there's another saying, your first loss is your best loss. Like, you made a bad choice. It ain't working. Cut your losses now versus persisting to the end and putting the additional energy and money into it. It's not in our nature to surrender. That's why there's such a reaction to that one. I like that.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. And that's why I made it my phrase of the day or word of the day, because it's something that you don't see, but you think, it's the best chance that they've got to get the highest number of seats.
So what are you going to surrender to?
What am I going to surrender to?
Where do you need to surrender? Where do you need to surrender, Brad?
Gee.
I like that.
Yeah. I don't know if you're asking me or asking me rhetorically, because
I'm asking you. I'm asking you. Like, seriously, I'm thinking about myself. What am I gonna?
Well, maybe the question is, where do you need to surrender to have to support your strategy?
And yes, and where is and this will tie into today's show, where is your ego in the way?
Yeah.
And not allowing you to surrender when it's probably a very logical thing to do.
Because for that leader of parliament, it would have been a very humble move to concede.
Yes.
They're not known for that kind of thing. It would have been a very tough decision. One of my favorite books, as I try to avoid your question, is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday.
Lovely book. Love it.
Yeah, I encourage all of my clients to read that book. Probably one of my top books in the last few years, actually. That is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Because your ego does get in the way. It does preventing you from, achieving what you really want. It's like there's a little somebody inside of you that's working actively against you.
Yeah, and your ego, there's a healthy part of your ego that drives you to make amazing things happen. But then there's a toxic piece inside of it. There's another probably one of my most impactful books in the last couple of years is a book called Positive Intelligence. And the way that the author Shirzad teaches it is you got a saboteur on one side who's kind of a negative force, and then you have a sage, which is the wise one on the other side, like the devil and the angel, and they're fighting all the time. And whichever voice dominates or is loudest inside your head is the direction you tend to go. And this can be tied into ego. There's a part of your ego that's wise and wants to make a difference. There's your part of ego that is frail and wants to protect itself and get you into trouble. So yeah, and in order to make a move like that, it would be the sage or the healthy part of your drive that would get you to surrender. And so what did you say you were going to surrender to?
Look, I don't know. I need to think about it more. That's the honest answer. But
yeah, I know that.
Why don't you lead the way?
It's interesting. I'm working on a project right now, and it's probably going to cost more than I want. No, I already got the number. It's going to cost more than I want. And I was meeting with the contractor the other day, and I'm like, yeah, I don't like that number. And so, there's a price in this world for the things that I want and the quality of things that I want. And so I think I am going to have to surrender that I don't like to compromise on some things, and truly that it's okay to, that I'm going to probably spend the extra money to get what I want. So I got to surrender to, value engineering the project on stuff that I don't care about, take that cost out. But on the other stuff that it's just okay. And if it really matters, then I should just pay it and surrender. That's what it's going to cost. And don't worry about it too much.
I've probably got an answer to your question briefly, because I don't suspect you're going to leave us alone. And our poor listeners want to get on and hear about the genius.
Well, don't you want to know what is our wonderful friend Brad going to surrender to? And little drum roll. Come on, here it is. He's had a few minutes to think, and now it's coming. Here it is. Wait for it. Over to you, Brad.
I appreciate that. So it's not what I'm going to, it's what I've already surrendered to. So I'm writing a book about onboarding new hires. And I've done a very large research study. For any author, the challenge is not to write a bigger book, it's to write a shorter book. So I've surrendered to omit things that are interesting but not relevant, because effectively the objective of the book is that any leader should be able to give it to any manager who hires and say, just read this book. And it's got to be short enough. That's the overall objective. So I've had to surrender my intellectual curiosity and validating all these points through 25 different angles to be able to meet the overall objective.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, that was very interesting. So surrendering and FOMO, and I'm sure they're tied together in some way, but we'll leave that for another time. So let's drop into today's show. What are we doing today? We kind of gave a hint to it when we talked about humility. So what are we digging into today, Brad?
Yeah, a subject that one of us came across in the last week, that as soon as we communicated with each other about this, we both said, yep, absolutely. Right. So this is the concept of the genius with 1,000 helpers. So it's kind of like the antithesis to true leadership, but is in itself a form of leadership, but it's like going to stop you getting to where you really want. So what we're saying is, are you the genius with 1,000 helpers? And if so, how do you get past this to become what we call a true level 5 leader?
Yeah. And in many ways, it's almost like, are you a genius, period, without the caveat? Because being a genius sounds good, and being smart is good, although sometimes it's a pretty serious liability. So what we'll kind of do in today, we're going to cover off, Jim Collins' model around level 5 leader. We're going to cover that off. And then we're really going to dig into what are the common almost symptoms, or what things that we see that cause people kind of to be stuck at a level 4 and not getting to the level 5, kind of where the best, and even some of the costs. And then probably at the end, we'll get into some strategies to do it. So should we dig into Collins's model here that he does some stuff on this, Brad? That sounds good.
Yeah. So Jim Collins in his work identified that empirically identified that there are 5 levels to leadership. And ultimately that truly great enduring companies are built by only level 5 executives. So level 1, imagine a pyramid. At the bottom of the level, the bottom of the pyramid, we've got level 1, which is a highly capable individual. They make productive contributions through talent, knowledge, skills. So they're a worker, okay? But they're individual. They don't necessarily work great in a team. Maybe we slide pizzas under the door to them. Level 2 leader is a contributing team member, okay? So they contribute to the objectives of the whole group in a group setting, so that they work well in a group, as opposed to the level 1, which really works well by themselves. Level 3 is a competent...
And Brad, before you move on, you want to allow me to share, and for those that are watching the video, I'll flash a graphic of this on the screen if you wanted to set me up to share. Forget sometimes that some people are watching on YouTube and they can get the visuals. So, and if you are listening on a podcast channel, you can just search up level 5 leader if you want to see it, or go to the YouTube recording, and here is the example. So continue on, Brad. We'll just leave that model up while you're describing it.
Okay, so level 3 is a competent manager. They organize people and resources towards effective and efficient pursuit of predetermined objectives. So that means that someone's telling them we need to produce 100 widgets. Someone's telling them that our team needs to sell $10 million, and they do it, and they do it well, and they can organize the people and the team to be able to achieve that. Then we get to level 4, which is where so many people get stuck, okay? And that is an effective leader. And that's really, the basis of today, which is they catalyze commitment to and vigorous pursuit of a clear and compelling vision. They stimulate the group to high performance standards. So effective leaders can build really, really good companies, okay? But the problem is, for effective leaders, it's so much about them, and there isn't an enduring element to it. When they leave, there's like a large vacuum that is left behind. And then, of course, we've got the level 5 executive. They build enduring greatness through a paradoxical combination of personal humility plus professional will.
So hear us clearly. The level 4 executive is a highly valuable team member. They create an incredible impact on their organization. They rally a team, drive a team. Great. They can get great results. So we're not saying it's not good. It's just not the most effective version or the best version of a leader in an organization that level 5 is. So they do make great things happen. They can be excellent people, all kinds of stuff. But in many ways, it's almost like the distinction between being, a VP in a company and truly being an executive, i.e., right? If you look to get to an executive level or a CEO level, it's a different skill set and a different perspective. So again, they all are great contributors. It's still, they're basically a level 4 leader is still a critical cog in the machine. Things still revolve around it, and it's an important cog. It's a well-built cog. It's a strong cog. It's a smart cog. But without that critical cog, things don't work.
And it's important to note that the hallmark of a level 4 leader is the genius of 1,000 with 1,000 helpers. Okay, so that's a great signature that when you and I, Kevin, look at leadership teams and we can see we've got a genius with 1,000 helpers. It's a hallmark of level 4. And the work that we're doing and that we're thinking about is how can we get this person to transition to level 5? How can we get this person to move to the next level?
Correct. And it's like, I know when I'm talking to a level 5 leader, different than when I'm talking to a level 4, even how they talk about their people.
Yeah.
Like level 5 leaders are bragging about people and how they're insanely good and make stuff happen, and how they don't really have to be very involved, and how they're almost humbled that this person works with them. It's amazing. Where level 4 leader talks about people more tactically. Like they talk like this, yeah, they're really good and they're good at this, and I help them with this, and I have to guide them with this, and I have to run the meetings, and as long as I take action. So there's a higher degree of involvement, and they talk about the people almost like they're smaller, where the level 5 leader talks about people like they're bigger. And in many ways, yeah, there's a shift that we'll talk about later, but this is the way they see things. And we want to kind of touch on, is it it's an opportunity for these people to grow. And what generally happens, and why people get stuck at level 4, is that they get caught and they don't have the ability to think about the business kind of beyond where they're at and beyond themselves. They see that they're a critical cog in the system, and they're focused on being a better cog, which is a noble intent. They want to be a better cog, versus seeing that they actually should not be a cog at all. Their goal should be almost to remove themselves from the system, which is counterintuitive. Unless you've had an amazing level 5 leader that you reported to, you might not even think this. I wrote in your Oxygen Mask First, I have a chapter called Make Yourself Useless. It's counterintuitive. The best leaders don't do a lot. They don't do much at all. They facilitate, enable, support, get resources, but the systems aren't dependent on them. And it's not in people's nature to engineer themselves out of the system. They're more likely to, and that's, and they're not bad people, because, as a level 4 leader, you're making a lot of decisions. You're in the middle of the action.
Yeah.
But you have to make the decisions. And if you don't, the people around you either aren't used to it, or are uncomfortable with it. And by the way, I don't know about you, my ego kind of likes making decisions. Makes me feel good, makes me feel important, makes me feel like my experience is valued, all kinds of emotional stuff from being the cog in the middle. And it provides you meaning, and it gives you some sort of purpose, and it holds you and your team back.
Yeah. All right. So let's dig in. We've got a few talking points here today. Let's dig into these. So I think we've kind of clarified what is a level 4. It's certainly something that's very, very common that we come across. And we know that the difference between a level 4 and a level 5 leader is predominantly around humility. It's around wanting their team members to endure past themselves, so they're humble, and they want the business to endure past their own time in the organization to build an enduring great company. So what have we got here, Kevin? First of all, we've got highly capable individual.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you got a highly capable individual who sometimes with massive, they have a lot of drive, and they are trying to do the right things. They just haven't figured out. And maybe we'll start with the inversion, which is later on our list. We'll start about it. Basically, the mindset, the inversion that everything it takes to become a successful level 5 leader, and let's just say to be a vice president in a company, everything it takes is about your ability to deliver and have a team around you supporting you. But it's like you are accomplishing and these people support you. And it needs to invert so that your team is the one accomplishing and you're the one supporting them. So all of the wins and the pressure sit on your direct reports' shoulders versus all the pressures sitting on yours. So basically it's a flipping of the accountability and a flipping of the model. But again, that's not something that people can see and are even conscious of, that they need to do that because they're just so used to carrying the accountability and cross, taking the ball across the line, metaphorically.
Most of the time, the only way that you can get to be a successful leader is force of will, is just being like a train that is going 100 miles an hour as fast as you can and pushing projects through, pushing your will, pushing the decisions, making things happen is what gets you from sort of, let's say, the bottom of the org chart to the top of the org chart. But the problem is you're not actually at the top of the org chart. You've got one next level to go. And what got you to level 4 won't get you to level 5. In fact, it's the opposite. You need to invert that. Yeah.
So there's a guy, an executive, I was doing some work today. He's being developed for a CEO role. And I was doing some work with him on this today. And, when things got messy at the end of last year, it's almost like he took the company, he strapped it on his back, and he's trying to carry it across the finish line to get to their EBITDA target. And he literally is going, we had this much gap, and I can see him carrying the company on his back. Now, he pissed off some people around him. He drove some people nuts, but his intent was noble. But that's level 4. If it must be done, I'll find a way. And whereas, a level 5 leader wouldn't do that. Level 5 leader would rally the team and have the team figure out what the team's going to do, and have the team and then their teams figure out the action plans, and the executives and their people would figure out the plans, and together we would, versus if it's meant to be, it's up to me.
And it's so counterintuitive. It like is. you need to unlearn all of the things that you've learned through your career, which is so tough to do, right? It's so tough to do. So many times I start working with a leadership team and everything rests on the entrepreneur's shoulders, just like you said, so many times. And they're like, I don't know how to get the people around me to take responsibility. Like I give them KPIs and they hear me and they look at them and sometimes they do a good job and they're good people, but I can't get them to step up. And that's because everything that has got you to this point in time is there. And then the amazing thing, after a year or two, people begin to say, it feels like a different leadership team. And then the entrepreneurs are saying, well, everything, all of the decisions had to be made by me. And now what I'm finding is that I'm only coaching. They are only coaching. All of the decisions are being made by other people in an authentic setting.
And that's an indicator is what percentage of the decisions are being made by you versus your team. And by the way, it's not true that all the decisions had to be made by me. The truth is I made all the decisions. Right? It's a different habit. So then, the ideal, so what percentage, and again, back in oxygen mask first, the idea is one of the principles is stop being chief problem solver, which is something I see, leaders do all the time, and it keeps them at a lower level and it keeps your team from growing and taking responsibility. And it's, the threshold says your team should solve 90% of their own challenges and answer 90% of their own questions. Now that's a principle. The number might change, but that you should be letting them do most stuff. And that's what the best level 5 execs do, both because they probably know more to make it, and their job is to make a decision that they own so that they will make sure it works.
And it's not only entrepreneurs or CEOs that can suffer this fate.
True.
I'm thinking in particular about one organization that I've worked with, and there was a senior executive that was accountable for one function in the business. And this person was by definition level 4, or more importantly, by definition, a genius with 1,000 helpers. They didn't want to employ competent people. This person wanted to employ assistants, low-level young people, and that person could tell those people what to do. That this person could say, "You go and achieve that task and get that done, and then I'll give you the next task."
Yeah, great point. So let's kind of go through a couple of the main high points here. So one is, say or operate, one indicator where people get stuck is they say or operate like, if it's meant to be, it's up to me, right? Like it's on their shoulders. They're the one accountable. Second, and we see this in companies and it's pretty obvious, but there's a massive or big capability gap between that person and their leaders or managers underneath them. And I think, it's a great point you called out. This is not just about CEO. Any level in your organization, you could be a level 5 leader, but the capability gap, and whether it's they haven't thought about building stronger people, or they have strong people, but because they're making decisions for them and not challenging them enough, it keeps them small.
And that's such a great point. If you look at any business that you can think of, or any team with a leader, what's the difference in capability and competence between the leader and the person who report to the leader? Because if it's 2 or 3 levels, okay, that's a really important sign that you've got a genius with 1,000 helpers problem.
Yes.
If they're about on the same level and they can argue and debate at an equal level of competence, then that may be a sign that they're not suffering from this problem. But it's kind of everywhere to a degree as well.
It is. And it's hard for some people to have really incredibly good people on our teams, right? It takes a lot of humility and confidence to have outstanding people around you, because they should be smarter than you in their particular area. They should. And if you're doing the right thing for an organization, they should be able to take your job. And but that's not something that everyone is up to. So that's another one. The capability gap, massive sign. And tied with that, how they speak about those people, even the way they look at them is a sign that's similar. You already touched on this, but if you left the business, there'd be a really big hole, and that your division or your team could fall on their face, i.e., your leadership is critical for their success, i.e., without you, things don't work. And that's an indicator that you're closer to that genius with 1,000 helpers.
When I'm looking to engage with a leader, one of the things that I'm asking myself is, has this person got the capability to get to level 5? Okay, so I want to work with companies that become enduring great businesses. That's kind of the preface that I use. So the person who's running the business or owns a business has to have that capability that I can tap into and get them there. Like it's kind of like one of my rules. So I go back to the previous point that you made. I remember I met with an unnamed leader, and we met a few times, and this person was telling me time and time again how all of the people he was surrounded by were absolutely incompetent. How they, he went to great extremes to say how bad they were, and it was just one of the many signs that made me think this person isn't doing it because he's necessarily surrounded by incompetent people. Okay, he thinks that he's the smartest person in the room, which is a problem. There's no humility there. But there was nothing that I could tap that could transition him out of level 4 into level 5. And that really goes back to what you said, that, if that person left the business, would there be a dangerous hole in that role? Yeah, because he was keeping them down. He just thought that they were no good.
Yeah, and if you find yourself thinking you're the smartest person in the room, that's a dangerous thought, right? And you technically may have the highest EQ or most experience in the room. You might, or you might not, and it might not matter. But if you're thinking that you're way smarter, your brain starts to close and you're not able to leverage the brains of those people around you, or in many ways respect the brains of those people around you. And that's a real dangerous, slippery slope. And even, the most effective level 5 leaders I've had the honor of working with, they're going to listen to perspectives from anyone.
Yeah.
Right. Now, they might not agree with them, but they are going to truly listen and take them in. And if it fits, they take it on board. If not, they don't. Yeah, that's and that would tie into the next one, Brad, is that, you as a leader or someone on your team, if you're thinking of this, finds it hard to get or keep good people. Right? Like level 5 leaders, people want to work for them. They attract talent, and people don't want to leave because it's an environment where people thrive. And so if you're finding it hard to get them, you might have a bad reputation. Or keep them. Maybe people don't love working with you. And it's not that level 5 leaders don't challenge people as much. They do. But the genius with 1,000 helpers, there's almost a built-in undervaluing or disrespect of the person because you're treating them like they're not that intelligent or capable.
Yeah, you don't understand, Kevin. It's really hard to get people who are great in the way you're describing to work in our area or industry or in our geography or whatever it is. You don't understand, right? This is what we hear all the time. You don't understand. And it's like when someone says to you, you don't understand, it's really hard to get people to work effectively in this industry. Is it the industry or is it the geography or is it you? Because to pick up on that point and your previous point, like the job of a level 5 leader is to tap the native genius inside the people who report to them, to find that spark of genius and to amplify it and amplify it and amplify it, because that's where the respect comes from. And you can only do that if you're coming from a base of humility.
Yes, and a base of believing in other people and their ability to grow and improve. And the idea that you are indeed very replaceable in your organization, right? But that comes from humility. And that humility is knowing that you have great strengths. It's not, about being a wet noodle. It's you have great strengths. And that there are other great people that you can work well with and learn from and teach to them as well. And that someone else could do your job better than you, and maybe that might take some time or learning or development. The humility is critical. And the thing about the humility is that you don't need it to be about you. You don't need the limelight. You don't need to be the one seen as making the decision. That you're happy. And I see this in meetings when I work with level 5s, is that when there's something to be done, they'll step back and say, hey, team members, please, won't you guys present it? Or team, what is your recommendation? And they will step back and step out of the way and let those people do great work versus it having to look like their work.
Yeah, our audio engineer just had a heart attack because you stepped back to demonstrate it to me, but the audio.
And when I step back, did it get quieter, Brad, the farther I step back?
Yeah. Poor old Brendan's having heart failure right now.
I know. Sorry about that.
But I want to pick up on what you said, right? Because what's happening, another way to put it is, when you're in a meeting with your team as a CEO or as a leader of a team, who's the last person to speak? Okay. It's a really small and simple thing to do. But if you're the first person to speak, okay, everyone else is going to fall into line with what you're saying. Okay. And it's a simple tool. But in every workshop that I do, every single one, I ask the one of the least hierarchical persons on the org chart in the room, if that makes any sense at all, to speak first. So the last person,
one of the people with the lowest power or authority.
Correct. Thank you.
Is that what you're trying to say? Yes.
That's exactly. Thank you. The very last person will be the CEO. Okay. And then if there's another person like a COO, they'll be the second last. So I want authority to speak last, because that gets the people without authority to think for themselves, and it forces humility, and it forces difference of opinion. And it begins to tap the genius of others. And ultimately, what I'm trying to mechanically do is transition that leader to think about always speaking last, and then that is one of the level 5 traits.
Same, Brad. And sometimes, leaders are so, again, most of our core contact is through CEOs, but they're so keen to help and be of service and be of value. They jump in and offer their opinions, and many times I'll have to pull them aside, and say, hey, love it for you to be last. And when I go through and do a wrap up, I always similarly go to the CEO last. Now, if there's a few partners in a business, I might mix it up a little bit, but the lead partner, or a managing partner or CEO, always the last to comment, ideally on everything, because they skew the conversation. And I always remember, I think we chatted about this before. One organization, the CEO started using an iPad in the meeting. Wow, before you know it, everyone's got iPads. Another organization, they all had the CEO had this certain type of shoes. Lo and behold, people are wearing those kinds of shoes. The best one is, and this is a company that the people don't travel that much. The CEO has one of those briefcases on wheels like lawyers have. Everyone's got a briefcase on wheels. It was hilarious, but because it's, the power and influence that a leader has, and at any level, it gets role modeled and followed. And on some of the stuff we don't necessarily want following, we want open thinking. So,
and all of that you've just said are small byproducts of the force of will that's got that leader to that position. Yes. All of those things. Okay. But the great leaders now, the level 5 leaders, step back and they tap the genius of others. They get the other people to think for themselves, and they find every opportunity to not interfere with that individual thinking, and getting those people to be great in their own right.
Yep, absolutely. Next thing is and a thing that shows up for Genius with 1,000 helpers. It's hard work to get people to deliver to their expectations, right? Because in many ways, and they're closer in the direction to like a taskmaster, and getting people to do work on their behalf, and it's just harder to get people to deliver because you're setting people up in a more tactical role. Sometimes they're not as involved in the big picture, or they're not involved in decisions as much. They're more just executing. And it's an indicator of or it's one of the things that level 4 leaders or Genius with 1,000 helpers have, because they're always trying to get better helpers and get better stuff out of their helpers.
And maybe you think it's because they don't have the ambition, or they're not as hungry, or maybe you think it's because they're not as determined. But the problem is that ultimately you are paying their mortgage, you are paying their salary, and if you have such a high force of will, and you are driving everything to get executed all the time, they're going to sit back and they're going to say, okay, what would you like me to do? Hands off. Tell me what you want me to do. If you want me to do 30, I'll do 30. If you want me to do 77, I'll do 77. That's what I will do, because they're simply complying to what you want them to do, because that's your operating mechanism. I'm going to force it through.
Right. Totally. Which takes us into the next point, is that you find yourself to be the driver of and accountable for many projects. You're the genius with 50 projects or 20 projects or 10 projects, but where you're the one leading the meetings, you're the ones whose name's beside the accountability, you're the one driving it, you're the one troubleshooting it. So, that's, and man, we appreciate it in the companies where thank you for owning and driving those projects. It's great because it gets us results as a company, but it inhibits your growth. It inhibits your team's growth, and you're probably going to burn yourself out if you haven't already, because you're carrying too much on your shoulders.
So yesterday I'm working with a leadership team, and they're looking at putting in an asset management system. Okay, so that every machine or whatever it is has a barcode on it, and it's got its own code, and it's all in a software. And the CEO says, "I'm the only one that can do it." Okay, hang on. Wait. What do you mean you're the only one that can? Okay, you've already got 7 priorities this quarter, of which my best guess is you'll probably do 2, maybe 3. Okay, and so you're saying that you're the only. What about all of these other people that are A, in this room, and B, in the company? Is there any way that you can get other people to do it? Well, they just won't do it the same way as me. Okay. What's going to happen if they don't? They'll stuff it up. Like, you've got to be able to pass things off. You've got to tap that genius of others.
Yeah. And the way that you start that is by making people accountable, and it sits on their shoulders, and it's their job to figure out. It's their job to come to you if they need help. And that's how you build leaders. It's also how you free yourself up as a leader and take your helpers and make them their own leaders. Because that's really what we're talking about, is going from a genius with 1,000 helpers to being this level 5 leader. And the only way you can do it is to turn your helpers into leaders.
Yeah.
Because when your helpers become leaders, well, then great things happen. And they're thrilled too. The whole system benefits. But as long as your helpers are helpers, man, I hope you're really, take care of your resilience rituals. You're going to need it.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we did in that meeting yesterday. Is I forced the issue as I demonstrated, and I said, look, so why don't we give it off to this person or that person or that person? We identified a person. I said, look, let's make them accountable. We'll just set a meeting in about 2.5 months' time between the two of you. Put it in your calendar now that person will come back with this result. And you don't have to touch it in the meantime. You can check in if you like at a weekly meeting, but you don't have to touch it. But let's just get someone else to do that.
Yep. Perfect. So, and this is tied into the comment that we made about, your helpers becoming leaders is not having too many level 2 or 3 leaders. You got to have enough level 4s if you want to be a level 5, right? That's just a measure of the type of leader. Pretty straightforward. So the root of all of this is that level 4 leaders. Go ahead, Brad.
Just to clarify that point, sorry. Are you surrounded by level 2s who are contributing team members? Are you surrounded by level 3s who are competent managers, or are you surrounded by level 4s which are effective leaders? Is the point that we want to make there?
Correct.
Because we want you to be surrounded by level 4s. Not level 3s or level 2s.
Yeah, in many ways, it's almost like a math equation. If you want to be a level 5 yourself, you need some level 4s around you. If you've got a whole bunch of level 1s and you're trying to be a level 5, the system won't work. Especially at scale, the system won't work. You're going to get sucked down to driving projects and leading projects. Level 1 is a highly capable individual, right? Yeah. And that's, you're not able to be at your best. So all we're really getting to, this genius with 1,000 helpers, is a normal place for people to get to in their world. Whether it's no matter where it is in an organization, it's a normal place to be where you're a critical cog and leader on the team, and you helped orchestrate a lot of stuff and make a lot of stuff happen, but you're in the middle of it. Versus stepping aside. I'll stay close to my microphone this time. Stepping aside and getting the people to be the ones that are fully having ownership of the systems and the programs and the goals, and you're there as a support piece, right? And it's like you might lubricate the gears a little bit, but you're not running the gears. You're not in the middle of the system, and that creates trust and growth and accountability for people, and for you, the whole idea is when you can shift to a level 5, you can handle more responsibility without as much burden. You're developing amazing people, and then you can focus outside of operational stuff and get more strategic, where there can be much greater value add because you're not caught in the daily firefighting near as much.
Yeah. So it's understanding that what got you here to level 4 won't get you there. If you have said, gee, this is terrible, I've got it. I am a genius with 1,000 helpers. And the worst part is I created this myself. It's okay. It's normal. But now you've got to understand, you've got to unlearn the force of will that got you here. Embrace humility and begin to identify and tap the genius of those around you and get them accountable for things so that you can escalate and get them accountable for those things themselves rather than you.
And one quick shift. And, I think I can move between level 4 and level 5. There's some things where I can get sucked down to level 4. And as our firm is growing, a great catalyst is brought someone on the team who is definitely a level 5 leader and an A player, outstanding at what he does. And I think some of the other team members would also be like that. But this one in particular, he's outstanding. And I also know that if I am going to work well with him, I have to be a level 5. Yeah. I cannot be a level 4 and manage a level 5. So my level 5 tendencies come out much more so, and it's easier, and I see different things. And again, I have awesome team, but my behavior has to change. The stronger my team gets, the more my behavior has to change, and the more it needs to be in that level 5 zone most of the time. I'm not striving for perfection. That's my own experience. So if you really want to make a move, hire someone or get someone on your team who is a player, level 5 leader, and use that as a great catalyst for your own growth if needed.
Yeah. So because let's remember, this concept comes from originally Good to Great, an analysis of, very, very successful companies. And the great leaders were level 5. The good companies it had level 4 leaders. So they were still incredibly successful, but the difference was they weren't enduring. When the leader left, there was a vacuum, and that success kind of imploded in on itself because it was all about the leader.
Yeah, and let's be honest. Would you want to work for a level 4 leader if you had a choice, or would you want to work for a level 5?
Well, everyone knows the answer to that. Everyone wants to work for a level 5. Everyone, because you're more valued.
Yes, and if we pick up where we started and we talked about surrender, the level 5 does surrender a lot more. They have incredible will and humility, but they leave things to other people, which makes them feel good and accountable and valued. So surrender, and they have less of the FOMO because they don't need to be in the action. Do you like how I tied those two together? They surrender more, using Brad's keyword, and they're more relaxed around FOMO. They don't feel like they're missing out by not being in the middle of the action. They're more comfortable being a leader on the side or away. Hey, isn't that nice?
That's I wouldn't say it's as good as some of the Canadian cheese that we've experienced in the past, but it's pretty good. All right. Cheesy, so with that, let's move to close. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this discussion about the genius and 1,000 helpers, a problem that we come across all the time. This has been the Growth Whisperers podcast. My name is Brad Giles, and you can find me, if you so desire, at evolutionpartners.com.au, and my co-host, Kevin Lawrence, at lawrenceandco.com. So thanks for watching. We hope you can aspire and achieve your level 5 leadership, and we look again to seeing you next week or hearing from you next week. Enjoy your week.
Have an awesome week.